One of the coolest things about Phobies has always been the map system. To me, it is one of, if the not the most impactful thing within the game. Phobies, of course, themselves aside. The map system impacts what phobies are played, when they are played, what strategies are available, and ultimately the overall player experience. If you played long enough and you've unlocked big maps, which it happens pretty early on in your Phobies career, you'll know that big jump from having only small maps into having big maps in the pool. And now every Thursday, everybody's anxiously awaiting to see what the new rotation brings. But everybody has their own thoughts on the maps, and Karticles has posted a number of suggestions for modifications pretty much across all maps. And we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of them tonight. Now, before we actually get into it, I, of course, have to let everybody know I am part of the content affiliate program. The Phobies team does give me stuff for producing Phobies content. So I got to get out there, full disclosure at the beginning. But we're going to be diving into some of the suggestions that Karticles has put up there. So let me know down in the comments. Let me know in Discord. The link for that, of course, is in the description alongside the live stream. You know, somewhere thereabouts, the like and subscribe button. Help me out. But let's get to it. Let me take a moment to touch on this because I didn't bring this up in the beginning. I'll have to edit it back into the earlier parts. I don't expect that we're going to get any changes to any maps, realistically. The reason for that is while we have gotten one, we'll call it a bug update. There was a panic point that was out of position. We've only gotten one other map update to the once lore that really was a balance concern. It was moving the position so that you can't just immediately pop out a jar and then snipe something onto the center panic point. It was very relevant for that map because it would encourage, enhance, enforce stalemate scenarios. And I don't think that we're in that position for a lot of the other, or any of the other maps. I think it's more just, this is how the maps were designed. And the most likely thing, in my opinion, is the team releases just new maps with lessons learned. Maybe phases out the less popular ones over time. That's kind of how I'd expect it to go. So as I was mentioning, Hakune was actually hanging out in stream earlier, and I know Hakune is a big fan of Xylo. Now, I have a few different things and thoughts on this map, and I know this is not really a map that is one that's super loved by the community. And there's reasons for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about it, but first I want to highlight the suggestions that Karticles is pushing here. Now, I don't have all the notes. I was hoping that Karticles would make it to the live stream to try and defend some of these or suggest exactly what is going on with any of them. But overall, I believe the general thesis behind Karticles or Karst's suggestions is to make the maps more aggressive, try and avoid stalemates, which there are players who enjoy those, and I want to try and touch on each of the players' skill levels, touch on player preferences, and health of the game as we're looking at each of these. So, what changed on this map? Well, there's two major components that changed here, and we're going to highlight them right now. This and this. You can see the somewhat Microsoft Paint job here, but that's okay. If you don't remember, on the actual Xylo map, remember, we're looking at suggested changes. On the actual Xylo map, in those circles that are up there, those are abyss points. Those are abyss tiles similar that we have here, 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 and here. Now, how does this change the map? Well, the immediate response in my Discord when Karticles posted this up was that it will prevent people from doing some defensive boops or even some more interesting boops where if one player ends up with things here or another player ends up with things here, and then you can send out a droney to this position, maybe block this, you can force a boop to somehow end up in the pit that's here or here. Is that very likely? Well, we'll get to that. Is that going to be something that's going to change people's opinions of this map? We'll get to that also. My initial thought on this, just hot take right off the top of my head, is I dislike this change. I don't see any advantage. Now, one of the points that was brought up by Karst initially in defense was that this tile typically does not play into games. And I think that's accurate. But I don't think that this change addresses the core problems with the stalematiness of this map. So what have I personally observed on this map? In most cases, this map boils down to stalemates. You're going to get a yoink here. You're going to get a yoink here. You maybe get some Gravedigger blocks here, or Gravedigger breaks rather here. Gravedigger or Crushmore, that is. Put X's on there so it's a little more obvious. You know, you break these, maybe you eventually break these. But a lot of the map boils down to, hey, I have Spider and a Tractor. You only have Spider. I'm probably going to win. You have Octonauty and, well, if you go Akira, like Akira's probably blowing this game up. Like, it doesn't matter. The point is that it often boils down to enormous stalemates, trading keys over the central panic point. Maybe one player gets lazy or confused or runs out of time in arena and they leave something here, and then a Hevo 2.0 comes in and blows up their entire world because something big gets annihilated by dropping into the abyss. The only other thing that I've seen that's commonly happening on this map, because I tried a number of honey bear strategies, I know other players have tried that. I was losing to Hevo 2.0s here because the aforementioned Boop was a threat, but also Lobs just pulverizing the heart. And a Hevo 2.0 here is difficult to dislodge due to health. It's difficult to dislodge due to the Lob, and difficult to dislodge due to, well, a Boop. I hate to keep bringing it back to that, but that's really important. Point is that I don't believe that changing either of those Abyss tiles makes really that much of a difference for the purpose of reducing the stalematiness. So what will end up happening, I think, is this top one goes to the orange player. And then this bottom one goes to the blue player. And then now you have these, and you have these, and we're reduced to fighting over this again. And I think that's kind of where it boils down to. And the reason being is that you just can't really safely invade this. I guess you could put something on the spa and lob, but okay, they're just going to put a 1 key here and call it a day. Now there's the opportunity that a droney, no, it'll be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A droney can get here. We know it can get there. We know it can set up because of the aforementioned or earlier mentioned boops, where you can boop somebody into this pit. I think this ultimately just reduces this to closer to a normal map, but it doesn't feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, chat, and YouTube, let me know in the comments. Cars, if you're listening to this afterwards, feel free to correct me. I don't feel like this addresses the stalematiness of this. Now, there is an argument that now, since this is an Abyss tile, or is not an Abyss tile, it is a panic point, you could put a regular Phobie here, or here for that matter. You put a regular Phobie there instead of only a flying Phobie, and then that gives you the opportunity to maybe swing in with more forces, because you could have a range thing over here, you could swing in this way, maybe there's another Phobie that comes in, you know, like if this is a range Phobie and then this is a cassowary, it leaps, whatever. There might be ways to stage a larger, more effective offense because you aren't as limited in the number of Phobies that could be there. You could also hypothetically then break these blocks, give you a straight run to these panic points, for what that's worth. Again, the Gravedigger and Crushmores were already getting used to break these in the center. So there's the opportunity there that you're getting additional value. Is that really going to change the meta of Attractor, Innocuous, Spiders, Octonauties, Akiras dominating things, Hevo 2.0s swinging through the middle and just lobbing the crap out of things, whether it's damaging or lobbing them right into the pit, just yeeting things into the abyss? I don't know that that really makes much of a difference. I'm not a huge fan of Xylo because it often has felt like who has more or better yoinks. Like if we have the same number, you have Moffat and I have a Tractor, I'm at an advantage. If you have Moffat and a Tractor and I have Moffat, a Tractor, Octonauty, I'm at an advantage. If I have 2 yoinks and you have 2 yoinks, but one of your yoinks is Akira, yeah, you probably just win. It's a very difficult scenario to manage. Now that we have access to Raucous and Boomer, maybe we'll see some rotations in what's utilized. Maybe there's an opportunity there to try and prevent something getting booped or yoinked into an inappropriate position, namely an Abyss or just death. But I don't know that this addresses the central issue. What would I change if I wanted to? Well, Chad is suggesting change the side Abyss tiles near the pocket panic points to heart so the middle is less divided. So you're saying change these to, like, put the heart here? Is that what's being suggested by chat? I may be misunderstanding because I don't see how that's necessarily making this any better. I think the big issue here is what primarily drives this map are these. I think these are the big problem. Because you just can't safely get to anything. Like, maybe flip these to lava tiles. Like, leave the Abyss here. Instead of changing these panic points, or maybe change them to panic points anyway, I don't care. But then you have this through line of lava. Well, there's an Abyss here, remember? And then this through line of lava here. And I still feel like Attractor and everything is still very relevant. I think the map loses a lot of its identity then, though. So I'm not sure that that's... We're basically revamping the map. And that's something... Bottom line for this one is I'm not a huge fan. It's a long E. Karticles? Is that what we're going for? Okay. Like Socrates? Yes. Okay, then there we go. Then I'll make sure that I correct that. I'll have to leave this in. Because I was definitely saying Karticles the whole time. So Karticles, we'll go with that. I don't know how long I've been saying it like that and nobody's corrected me. Karticles. All right, cool. Yeah, we'll leave that in. Maybe that'll be the intro. But anyway, yeah, for this map change, I'm not a huge fan of this because I think that ultimately we're not really addressing the core problems with Xylo. Now, that being said, to my earlier point that I said we're going to talk about the different player levels and the different impacts and the different play patterns. This is one that's a play pattern thing where a lot of people don't like it, but there are people that do. Putting Hakune aside, who loves every map, they're all his favorite, or their favorite. I don't think it's problematic to have a map like this exist in the pool as a whole, where it's just like, hey, yep, it's about yoinks. This map is about yoinks. And then another map is about this or about that, whether it's heart rushes, phobie fights, boops, flyers, fire, poison, whatever the mechanic. And obviously poison is, it's more like, don't play poison on this map, but you get the point. So point is, I don't really just agree rather with Karst on this one. I don't think it's necessarily making the map worse. Like, if this change went through, okay. I just don't know that it's going to materially impact the major complaints that most people seem to have on this map. And again, just because most people are complaining about it, it's fine if we keep things that people don't like. Because not everybody dislikes something and not everybody likes something, and you can like or dislike something independent of whether it's good or bad. Having a map or even multiple maps that are about a certain gameplay pattern is okay. It would be better if there were more options, but sometimes the more options is, we'll play a different map. Yes, ladder withstanding, that causes complications, but you get the idea. Like I said, we're not going to get through all of these. We'll take a look at a few of them. Well, maybe only 2. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. But Always Watching. So Always Watching is one of the newer maps. Xylo predates it by a fairly significant amount. But we'll highlight what the changes are here. What changed on Always Watching? Again, it's one of the newer maps. And again, these are not actual changes. These are suggested changes. We're going to be talking about the suggestions. Don't everybody freak out that, oh my God, this is, the devs are changing everything. We're just talking about community suggestions. And let us know what your thoughts are down in the comments, in Discord, whatever. So, Always Watching. These are the major changes, if you couldn't quite tell. New panic points. So normally there's only these 4. The original 4. Here, here. Well, I'll circle them so that you can see it a little better rather than me just putting dots. Here, 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 and here. These are the 4 original panic points. And the suggestion here is to add 2 new ones into the center of the map. Now, as mentioned in the early part of the Xylo discussion, a lot of the effort is to try and reduce the stalemate scenarios, encourage more interaction between opponents, and I think this would absolutely do that. Clearly, there's more panic points. My experience on this map up to this point has primarily been who gets the more abusive setup in their conga line here, and partially here. What do I mean by that? Well, if you get a lobber here, we'll make this a little... If you get a lobber here or here, obviously they can just shell the heart, right? They're just swinging at the heart, and it's kind of difficult. You got a choke point. You got it's tough to actually stage an offense or a defense rather to protect it. Here's the other part. If you get a crush more, you can actually block this off here. We'll seal these off, so now they can't touch it. Then, eventually, that Crushmore breaks this obstacle. You could have, like, a jar. So it's 1, 2, 3. You could have jar or inoculus here. You could have, you know, more offense set up. And then it's, can you stage some sort of weird defense to dislodge them, to threaten them, that sort of thing. It does not feel like this area, this Colosseum-esque part of the map, it does have things happen, but it feels like it's a secondary thing to the rest of this map. In my experience, anyway. So yeah, I generally, and this is from Karticles, yeah, I generally like the map structure, though I find that this map tends to hit stagnation and not much happens. Even with the Heart Rush scenarios, they kind of feel slow because your pressure is usually minimized. I would agree with that. You can't mount as strong an offense as, say, Moai. And I think that it leads to weird games because as compared to even, say you do set up your offense down here and you have some lobbers, your opponent has to either funnel through here or funnel through here or figure out a way to like break this and then charge in. It's difficult to get surface area with a lot of things, but it doesn't feel like this map is bad. Like, Xylo feels frustrating. I don't feel like this, I'm as frustrated with this map. Crushmore just makes this map look like a playground. You're not wrong. You're not wrong, Scarlet. Turn 1 Gravedigger is super common on the map to open up the wall in front of your keyhole. I've seen that, but I don't know how much I like it. It definitely does happen. I agree with that. I don't think this would change my map strategy on this map at all. It might change the tactics a bit, but the same endgame goal. I'm neutral on this one. What is the endgame that you're typically going for, DT? Is it the Heart Rush thing, or is it something different? So, while we're waiting for DT to respond, or anybody else who wants to in chat, in my opinion, this would probably help. This is a lot of panic points. This is a lot of panic points. And you could, so if you split it into this, because typically, you know, you're getting your own and you're getting your northern or southern one, depending on which side you spawn on. You could possibly get this, but the one problem would be if we assume there's a lobber on this point, it can pull back trivially to the panic point, the stem. So we'll get rid of some of these lines. So say there's Crushmore. Crushmore goes here, you invade, try and take this point. Crushmore now lobs, in addition to everything else, and then they can follow up with a 1 key to recap the point. Is that a problem? Because it does give your opponent who is rewarding the aggressor with a, what, like a 4-2 panic point advantage briefly? Turn 2 Crushmore breaks block for central access, then pounds the heart. Breaks the block for... Oh, so you're saying breaks this and then... This is DT's comment. So you're saying Crushmore comes out here, breaks this, and then swings to wherever? I mean, that is... Yeah, I don't think it changes it too much. Circling back from the digression to this, if we added these extra panic points, I think it makes this map more aggressive for sure, because any panic point with, or any panic point, any map with this number of panic points, 4 to 2 adds up pretty quick. Like, think even Opticon. If you control 4 of the panic points, you can pressure your opponent pretty well, especially if you make the assumption that there's a lobber pummeling their heart the entire time. Is that better? It certainly accelerates the map. I don't know that this map is truly stalematey, in the sense that, like, do we need to accelerate this one? It could probably do with a little bit of speeding up. I feel like panic point exchanges rarely happen on this map. That's absolutely true, and it would encourage that here, but what I expect most players to do is they're going to send in 1 keys. Like, they'll have forces that can kill these off, and they're going to trade 1 keys back and forth, is what I think most people will do. A lot of the higher level plays tend to be, all right, I'm actually making an invade. I'm trying to take down one of your major components, a significant portion of your army when I'm going in. I'm not just going in to kill your 1 key. So panic point exchanges happen, but usually just endgame or do or die scenarios. I'd agree. The big thing for me is it does feel like this map splits, and it's just, are we going to fight at your heart or mine, is kind of what this map feels like it boils down to. And that's, I would like to see that change. Similar to the Xylo one, this feels like it would do more than the Xylo change to address the standard play pattern. Just because there are more panic points, so it gives you another opportunity. Like, I can do something else on this map. I could try and fight for this center set of 4. I could try and... Wrong monitor. I could try and fight for these and hold this, instead of trying to, like, oh, I need to full-on invade. And that could coax my opponent out of here. Either they got to come out one way or another, because I will win the race otherwise. But yeah, I am more behind this change than I am on Xylo. I don't know that it's necessarily required, though. I think adding the 2 extra panic points makes the center in play and now gives players have to manage 3 areas instead of 2. Exactly. Exactly. That's why I think, and that's your attention, yes, that's why I agree with this one more. The problem with having even panic points, though, in general, and I don't really like maps with even panic points, is because you can get into those stalemates where it's like, all right, you have 3 and I have 3. And if the panic points are defensively positioned where it's just really dangerous to go in, then we just stare at each other and then we're right back to the original problem. That's the concern I'd have with this change. This feels like it should encourage more interest for players in what I call the Coliseum, in the sands of the pit here. The problem is, it is possible we just end up with what maybe what Atone is describing here. We end up with this. And we just stare at each other, and then we end up with lobbing here, and we're right back to square one, just with more 1 keys or low keys invested in some of these panic points. One other thing we could do is possibly move the vaults. And I'm wondering on a lot of maps if moving the vault is the answer. So the suggestion earlier, or not suggestion, but the comment earlier was that these blocks kind of get broken a lot by gravediggers, or crushmores for that matter. So that allows for quicker reinforcement. For example, like, if we go with this new setup, a range phobie can show up right here if this is blocked, and then immediately pew-pew at this point. Maybe we move things farther back. There's 2 reasons for this. One is not just, hey, I can protect it, but it's kind of in the same line. The other reason is that it does weird things for reinforcements. So if a shove comes in, blue player goes in and says, hey, whether we have these new panic points or not, blue player says, hey, I'm going in. How long is the walk for orange to get reinforcements here or here? Depending on what the push looks like, what angle it came from, what the phobies involved, that sort of thing. I'm not saying we should do that on this map, but it's a thing to keep in mind for anybody who's looking at, hey, either general map design or map, like modifying the existing maps, is where is the vault and how quickly does that impact gameplay? How fast can you get reinforcements in? Because if you make it difficult to reinforce, it encourages invades. Because then you can, it's not, hey, I invaded, they immediately answered, and all my stuff got blown up. That's the thing. So I think it's something to keep in mind. Is it an answer in this particular scenario? I'm not sure. Yeah, if you end up with each person holding 3, the only incentive to push is if you're losing, which is weird. And that's basically where we're at today, just with less panic points. Because remember, these are new and suggested. So now it's 2 versus 2, and then we have somebody, you know, it becomes primarily focused on hitting the heart. Which, again, that's fine that that sort of map exists. I think these 2 blocks are part of the problem. Maybe reducing these would be nice. Like, maybe this one has to go, just baseline. So if we get rid of this block, and I know there's other comments that I'll come back to, I just want to get this thought out. Maybe we get rid of these blocks. The reason I don't want to remove this one or this one is because I don't want there to be plain phobies that can just immediately pew-pew to the center. If we get rid of these blocks, it gives you more surface area as the defender to swing in from multiple lanes to try and blow up these forces. Is that enough? I don't know. I think that that might also alleviate some of these problems without having to address panic points. But I'm not 100% sure there. Yeah, the centralized vault positions cause problems sometimes. Even worse are maps where you have top-bottom keyhole and it's really easy to manage things your opponent does as a result. Phobopolis is the most extreme example of that. Is it? Phobopolis, to me, also boils down to stalematey situations because it's just kind of, all right, lobs. And then who can properly manage their terraformer the most. But that's a discussion for another map. Personally, the closest thing I had to stagnate, drawn-out game on Always Watching in the last rotations when an opponent traded foul for my Crushmore and my WinCon dead. My 3.0 had to chase their I assume that's Klopser around until they surrendered. Yeah, I don't know that we can say this is a stalematey map. The real question for this one is the overall play pattern for this map desirable? Similar to Xylo, where Xylo kind of boils down to the yoink question. And I think everybody agrees with that. There's some slight variations, but it basically boils down to, well, why not just, like, that's all it comes down to at the end of the day, is the yoinks. And I see the other comment, Karticles I, I'll come back to that in a second. For this map, the question is, what is the issue we're trying to solve? Well, we want to make sure that people interact more, and this kind of leads into Karticles' comment. Right now, a lot of the games boil down to, hey, we're going to split our forces. You go to the top, I go to the bottom. We'll see who's faster. A little bit of meddling in people's plans. You meddle some kids, and I would have gotten away with it too. But Karticles' latest comment was, my only thought on removing those walls is that you also now lose the wall out with Crushmore for offense. I think that's good. I think that's healthy. You can still put a lobber here. You could still put Spud. Or even Crushmore. You know, Crushmore breaks this and then eventually works its way down here and you get in there. You just, you know, you do the Madden thing. He's doing all this stuff and then he's getting in there. He's just blowing stuff up and whatever. I need to slur that a little bit more. But anyway, the whole point is that I think you can still do that. And while it is cool to go, oh yeah, I blocked you out. I got my obstacle and now this is locked off and I'm going to lob. Guess what? Your opponent's going to do it too. And at this point, it doesn't feel like it's very much of a unique strategy. It isn't something that takes a whole lot of creativity to come up with. It's it's not a very strong argument to say, oh, well, this isn't a creative enough move, so we're not going to encourage it in the map design. But, you know, you see it once and it's like, yes, literally everybody can do that. And as we're discussing, that seems to be if the goal is stop people from doing this split push plan, it's not real. Well, it's not really a split push in the sense of the way the term usually works, but we're splitting and we're pushing. If we want to stop people from doing this, would it not be more efficient to remove these? Maybe not. Maybe you need to remove these and add the points, or at least another point. The problem is that you probably need two just because the way the layout of the map is. But I think this goes back to, and why I'm harping on, it's like, what are we trying to solve? We want to force people, or maybe not force people. That's the wrong way to look at it. We don't want to force people to do anything. We want to give them options. So we want it to still be viable to threaten the heart. I think you can still do that, but I don't know if it completely, like, does it now become such a weak strategy that we never see it? I think you could still make a reasonable push, and maybe you have, the requirement is now you get both terraformers to recreate this wall, or you have the terraformer do it over multiple turns, or whatever. I can see how removing those walls would add pressure to the center panic points, though. So there's value in that. Yeah, I mean, it would allow for, you can swing through, you have your other ranged guy here. And now all of a sudden it can move in and threaten here. Or if we're adding these extra panic points, you can still threaten this one. Clearly you're threatening this one. I think there's additional things that could be changed here. Like the panic point close to the keyhole rarely gets threatened, but removing the wall gives another push avenue. I'm warming up to it. I think that there, yes, there are ways to do this. Get a little hydrate action. Thank you. I think there are options to this. Choke points have their place. And I think that, I like Vile Vortis. I like the big house. I like Opticon less than those other two, but I like that map. And clearly, you can set up a whole, there's a gazillion choke points. So you can set up wherever you want to block stuff off. You can build your own castle at your leisure. And I think that's fine. I don't inherently have a problem with this. I just don't know that it really does feel as though this map is solved. And the question is it solved in a way that's acceptable at the most skill levels? So calling back to this earlier point, we have to keep in mind that any changes to these maps are going to be played by all player levels. And there is an argument to say, hey, get a bigger collection, get good, get whatever. Because you're not going to be a noob forever. You'll eventually grow out of that phase. However, this is a mobile game. And for many people, this is a pooping game. We always have to keep that in mind that a lot of people are not going to graduate from I'm playing this game while I'm taking a dump into I'm Greed Lord McSweaty Pants in the top 0.1% of the world player base. Like that's just not going to happen for a lot of people by definition. So as a result, you have to consider those players as, well, either they're whales or putting some money into the game economy, or they're players that are not, and therefore they are playing, thereby being, the thing that's available for the whales. You know what I mean? I think everybody knows how free-to-play games work at this point. They've been around a little bit. Now, I'm not saying balance around people who are bad at the game, but you also don't want to ruin the game for them. I don't think that this does anything like that, any of these suggestions. But it is relevant to keep in mind so that you don't paint yourselves into a corner by alienating people. Because there's only so much that you can expect from people from their free time. It's just the way the world works. Reality is that I do think the games could be shorter, and that's why I can't really disagree with putting more panic points on the board, because there is a chance that the game just ends faster. Like, there's no way the game ends slower, right? Because at worst, we get a stalemate, which we could have already had. The only way, the only direction that more panic points pushes the game is in a faster one, and I think overall, Phobies could benefit from slightly faster games. You have to be careful, because if they go too fast, people are going to get frustrated. It's like, I never got to play a game. I just got run over. I don't want to play anymore. So we don't want to go too far in that direction. But I think you can have a reasonable skill expression in a slightly faster Phobies game overall. Like, I think you can get anywhere from 80 to 100% of the current skill expression in a Phobies game if the game ended a couple turns faster. Like, maybe make the panic points just do more damage. Throwing it out there. But anyway, digression aside. Okay, so we looked at two larger maps. There are a few changes going on here on the suggestions here for Biff's room, or Biff's school. So, what changed? We removed an obstacle and moved the heart. So, the heart used to be here. It got moved up. And same, obviously, here. Additionally, the panic points were here, and now they are shifted in. So, what does this do? There's a few different things that are going to happen here. Obviously, heart pushes in general on Biff's room, they do happen. There are absolutely times where I've set up Hevos, I've set up Spuds, I've set up whatever lobber, and they go to town on the heart. There's also times where, you swing around and you can pressure your opponent because they got caught out of position. That sort of thing. And you're able to rush down the heart. It is absolutely in the minority of what I see on this map. And I think chat and everybody else would confirm that. If you disagree, let me know, especially down in the comments. Now, pushing the heart up, though, it clearly exposes it. And it's not uncommon. This is typically a turret map for me. As in, I literally open Stabby. I literally open Bowmangles. And then if you're going second, maybe you march a 1 key down here, which segues into this next change. This is no longer a easily acquirable, advanceable panic point. You can't just run a 1 key here. It's going to take an extra set of turns, or obviously a 3 mover such as Droney or Snowball. As I was saying, you lose the ability to just immediately cap this point. So if we're going for more aggression, this does slow it down as well as speed it up, because you can't immediately cap these points. But Snowball, and chat saying Snowball is just an insult to anyone that doesn't have Snowball. Yeah, it changes the game for you. It's like many other stress phobies. It absolutely changes the game. But Snowball can just as easily cap the center as any of these side points as it can today. So, to me, as mentioned a moment ago, the majority of the time this map is turret-based. You both kind of set your concaves up. One person usually gets in here, and then the other person's like tucked into the corner here or down here, and then has to make a really awkward push unless somebody goes out of position or Spider comes in. Often this map is get a turret online, stabilize the board, so you got your concave, even if you're down panic points, and then just bank to a Hevo 3.0 and go over the top. Or bank to a boss and blow up their whole board. That's kind of what it feels like it boils down to on this map most of the time. Clearly, there's other avenues and other ways that it could play out, depending on, did somebody get caught out of position? Even a slight positioning error can be difficult to recover from, because then the snowball effect, not the phobie, but, this mistake leads to that mistake, they compound, and then you something get blown out, sort of thing. So Karticles is saying, the main issue for me is that the side panic points in the current version might as well not exist. They are too close to the keyhole to contest. The dominant playstyles on this map is turtle for a queen, and you can't stop it. Pretty much repeating exactly, well, this comment came out before I was saying it, because I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but yeah, same thing. Now, for people that are unfamiliar, a queen, as I've been terming it, and it seemed, Karticles seemed to have picked it up as well, and other people, is those big over-the-top phobies, the bosses, the Hevos, the beauties, those sort of things, where it's, I slam this thing on the board, and it is just better than everything else that's on the board. So turret, turtle to queen is kind of the avenue. And I think that is a lot of what this map boils down to. Now, that is the case to me on a lot of small maps. It is, for the most part on small maps, viable, and maybe that's a general change that will have to materialize, but for a lot of small maps, because you can't really pressure the hearts, you can't really threaten a huge panic point advantage, or even a even if you control all three, yes, it's a big clock, but it might not. They claim 1 point back, and all of a sudden it's a way smaller clock. It's probably always going to be a viable thing, and I don't think it's necessarily bad for it to exist. But what do we do to try and alleviate that so it isn't the only strategy? Does this change enact that particular or complete that particular objective? I think it absolutely presents the option to push the heart now. It's just plainly more accessible. So if you bully your opponent back, so you have your concave set up, and then they get pushed back here, they still have some surface area because there's 2 points here. You know, you could be here, you could be here. Well, there's 3. You could be at any of these, even here. We're assuming on a heart push that some of these spots are not occupied by the defender. But point is that you could push in and threaten it and maybe bully them out and then still get at the heart. It also, as Karticles was saying in the objectives for this, is it makes it more complex from the defender perspective, which goes back to what I was saying on the Always Watching map. If you move the vault or just make it more complicated to reinforce. So if you send a spud here, a jar, whatever lobber, yes, you can hit this spot, but you can't hit here, and this can target your heart. You can't hit here, and this can target your heart. You can still come out this way and hit something here, but it gives you more avenues to actually attack the heart in order to cap these points that were otherwise safe. You need to actually overextend a little bit. You need to put in some effort. Because, for example, in the old position, only Jar can hit this. I mean, I guess Chuck too, but okay. Chuck goes in, it's not quite a queen, but it goes into the queen bucket in this scenario. You could Jar. But here, now you can Spud, you could Hevo, you could Fire Ant, you could whatever, and actually threaten it. You could also, from a more defensive position, from here, hit it with a ranged Phobie and not have to be here and overextended, or as overextended. That leads into one of my concerns with this, with the panic points, is, okay, does that mean that now these are too defensible? So blue player can hit this. Orange player runs in and caps it at some point early on in the game. Blue player can hit it. So maybe blue player recaps it and they defend it, and then just orange player. Are we trading 1 keys across 2 points now? Well, 3, I guess, because we'd also consider the center. I don't think it'll be as much of an issue because players are going to have to split keys across all 3 of these points. If you're trying to trade for this one up here, you're trading here, but then maybe you can spawn 2 in a turn and you sneak this one down here, or you're still fighting over the center because that's where all the forces are. I think there's something there where it might be okay. My concern, like I said, would be if, say, blue player caps all 3 and then has a ranged guy or a lobber or both, and it's just impossible, quote unquote, for orange to get in here. But I think that just rewards somebody taking advantage. Like they've garnered an advantage. They deserve the reward of the advantage, which is closing the game out faster. Which goes back to the earlier point of trying to accelerate the games slightly. The risk here is, again, are we introducing a reduction in skill level by not allowing more time to recover? Now, there's an argument to be said, well, then don't make the mistake in the first place to fall behind, but it's not necessarily a mistake. Maybe you allowed your opponent to do that because you wanted to bank, not necessarily to do the queen thing, but just to bank because you wanted to do a different strategy. Are we ultimately reducing the quantity of viable strategies by progressing the game faster? I think by definition, yes, but how much? and how many. Overall, I think the biggest thing I like about this is exposing the heart. I think exposing the heart immediately presents the ability to just go, hey, I have to go in. I'm going to either roll the dice and say they don't have enough damage, or I bullied my opponent out. This is my reward. Because if you bully someone out on this map and in the old panic point position, it is possible they can still hold a 2-to-1 deficit and have enough time to recover to then slam their big phobie and take the game back over. We are probably removing that from, not entirely, because that would still happen, but we are removing that from the likely scenarios table to a large degree, like just reducing that piece of the pie from this to this, we'll say. And that's probably good. There should be a fair bit of recovery room, at least when the game is starting. I don't think that this is significantly changing the early part of the game. I think it just, instead of accelerating to the end game, we're shrinking the end game, if that makes sense. Yeah, that 235 heart damage turn is not a serious consequence for turtling. Exactly, and that's the thing. So where I'm going with this is I wonder if it is too drastic of a change to do both of these. Personally, I like the heart positioning more. I mean, maybe there's an argument to put it in this spot instead of here. I haven't really, even in the course of this discussion, I haven't really thought about that. I was just always assuming that it was going to go from here to here. But I wonder if both of these changes might be too much. I'm not sure. Again, similar to the other discussions we've had, I don't know that if the central issue is turtling, how much are we changing it? If the goal is to avoid turrets into Queen, our bosses, our Kivo 3.0s, our beauties, our whatever. Pick your least favorite high-cost phobie. There you go. Are we really stopping that? Because I don't think that this materially changes, say, the stabby opener. You're still going to march stabby here, or through here. Your one key will be delayed. Now, again, this is all hot takes, so maybe this is going to be different. I don't know. I don't know if this materially changes it. DT saying, more relevant to other maps, but I see the purpose of a generally uncontestable panic point. It's not a purpose Karticles wants, but it has an effect that should be considered. I'm all ears for it, DT, if you want to elaborate, because I agree. I think there's value in it. So, as a more general map discussion, there is value in having just different types of maps. And I probably should have touched on this earlier. Maybe I'll edit it into if I split these out as different videos, but there's value in having different types of maps. I'm going to repeat it one more time. There's value in having different types of maps. There's value in allowing players, if a particular map favors a given strategy. Now, that's problematic for ladder because not everybody has certain phobies, not everybody has certain phobies up to certain levels, so therefore they can't necessarily participate in what the primary focus of the map is. But I don't think that it's inherently bad to have that, to encourage people, not just encourage, but give them more than a gentle nudge in a specific direction. I do think it's problematic when it boils down to, like, say, Xylo, and it's like, all right, it comes down to the yoinks in a lot of scenarios. Or if certain, like a particular phobie, say Akira, is going to dominate an entire slew of maps. But I think that there is value in having those ones that either explicitly slow down the game, explicitly accelerate the game, and just having these different play patterns. So I think that when we talk about changing the maps, we don't want to go too far, and that's why I think ultimately the team would introduce new maps rather than modifying old ones so that they can say, okay, well, at least we have Xylo still. We still have Always Watching in this particular vein, but we're going to make Always Watching 2.0 and modify it with these slight tweaks, and there you go. I mean, we have Vile Vortis, we have Opticon, we have the Big House. They're all we have a ton of columns in the map. You can set up walls wherever you want. You can build your castle wherever you want. And it allows for that particular play pattern to exist. I think that's okay. But I think that comes down to two issues. One, the ladder. You don't get a say in what map you play on. And two, or outside the ladder for tournaments, aka Fright Night, whether it's Dios's event, it's Jelly Belly's events, it's whatever. We don't have access to the whole map pool, so we're still at the mercy of the map pool to a degree. You can do bans, but you can't just say, custom map pool, we're going to set it up and do it that way. So there are some limitations. Those are all the suggestions, at least for now, from Karticles. So Karticles actually went through and commented on, well, all the maps. So if you're interested in seeing those, I'm sure they'll make way to the official Discord, but it's already been posted in the Random Thoughts Discord. Link for that, of course, for the live stream and my Discord are in the description. You know, thereabouts the like and subscribe button. I got to get those in there when I can. But that's going to do it for this one. Let me know what your thoughts are on the suggestions, the maps in question, or any of the other maps down in the comments. Or, of course, hit me up elsewhere. That's going to do it for this video. So, as always, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And Black Lives Matter.